And joining us right now on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line, chances are you're following him already on his social media because the guy covers the Eagles like no other. Always interesting facts, always interesting stats, always great storylines as well. Thomas Peterson joining us all the way from Denmark. Now, I had heard tales about you, Thomas, that you were off somewhere in Europe, just gallivanting around. But it turns out you're from Denmark. You're from over there, and you just happen to love. Yeah, you just happen to love the Eagles.
Yeah. Like surprisingly many Europeans like kind of just pop up out of nowhere. And the trend that I'm getting is that fans over here, while we're not that many because it's not that big of a sport over here, usually they're pretty diehard. I mean, stay up until late at night to watch games and really dig deep into the team. And some of them know what they're talking about. Yeah.
I'm sure they do.
By being from over here.
Yeah, right. I was in Amsterdam. I don't know. It feels like 1,000 years ago. It's like 15, and I had a chance to go to an Amsterdam Admirals NFL Europe game. And my buddy and I ended up blowing it off. And literally, like maybe a week later, the league collapsed and it was no more. So we're like, we missed our opportunity. But yeah, man, other than that, yes, there are some diehard football fans over there, American football fans, I must say. Now, this is why I had to talk to you today. No, by the way, for people that are curious, because I know people are always interested in the time difference, it's 6. You guys are 6 hours ahead of us. So it's 4 o'clock the time we tape this. It's 10 o'clock where you are, just to do that fun math. Speaking of math and numbers, Thomas, check this out. This is a tweet from you that I just laughed out. I laughed out. I laughed out loud over it because it's like this is what they are on pace for. And in baseball, you always see if a guy hits 3 home runs on opening day, he's on pace for 1 billion home runs, whatever. Well, you did this for the Eagles. Smitty, 85 catches, 1,400 yards. A.J. Brown, 113 catches, 1,700 plus yards. Goddard, 952 yards. Like, and then you just top it off with, that's insane. And it is insane, but when you think about it,
scenario.
It's a dream scenario.
Yeah, and it's very unlikely considering the hot start they've been up to this season. I mean, it's going to cool down. There's going to be some ugly games, but really this is what we talked about throughout the offseason. Can they distribute the ball to these playmakers that they've now collected on offense? And so I just thought it was fun to see that right now it's pretty evenly distributed. And in a way where it's just inflated. I mean, if there's something we know about right now, it's inflation. Jalen Hurts is just, and Sirianni and Steichen, I guess you can take those guys in as well. They're just creating a passing offense right now after having such a run-heavy offensive approach at the end of last season that we're now seeing these offensive weapons in the pass game put up monstrous numbers and so evenly distributed. And I just thought it's a fun projection to make because it kind of solidifies how extremely well the offense have been throughout the start of the season here.
Understood. So is it just that easy to go, well, if this, then that? For instance, Jalen Hurts, if he worked his butt off in the offseason, is it just bearing fruit right now? Is it really that simple to say, okay, they've added pieces, they've added talent, and he has worked extremely hard in the offseason. This is why they are having the amount of success that they're having now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it plays a big part into it. And adding A.J. Brown, I think, is invaluable in terms of how this offense have changed. I mean, just looking at yesterday, the second half kind of slow, and then they hit a slant for A.J. Brown, and he just goes for 20 yards and moves the chains, and it kind of just changes the momentum of the game. A big throw downfield. He makes a nice contested catch. Smitty as well does that. But I mean, from week one, the whole takeover of the offense, A.J. Brown really presented, and that the connection with Hurts was there immediately. I think that moved the bar for the offense so much. And I mean, looking at just projecting from around the league, we saw with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, we saw those guys when he's missing Devontae Adams, when Tom Brady is missing Julio Jones and Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans being suspended. It was not pretty for those guys as well. So when you're adding that big playmakers around a quarterback, naturally he's going to take a jump up. But I don't think we can't discredit Jalen Hurts for the steps that he's taken already here to start the season into why they're having the offensive success that they're having. And really, like we saw week one, a lot of running from Jalen Hurts and a lot of scrambling out of situations. And it was really like, we've seen the same thing like last year. It's just this trigger button that he kind of has in his head, and things are breaking down in the pocket, and he just moves around. And then we see the Vikings game tore them apart systematically. And then here in the Washington game again, kind of the same thing with the Lions, a ton of man coverage, but not as much pressure as the Lions were sending at him. And he still was able to make big plays down the field with both Goddard, AJ, and Smitty.
When it comes to just their quarterback, when it comes to just Jalen Hurts, evaluating him, have you seen a big jump forward from last year? It's talent obviously helps, but just in terms of his play, how big of a step forward have you seen him take so far?
I think it's a considerable and very very obvious step forward that he's taken. And I think what is one thing is the ball placement, and we can get into all the throwing mechanics and all of this. That becomes very nerdy. But really the big difference for me when I watch him is that he makes decisions quickly. And when he sees something, he believes in it and he pulls the trigger immediately. And that really, sometimes it's easy passes and easy checkdowns, or like, you have a slant curl combination. You see one guy, you see the flat defender moving with the curl, and you just hit the flat immediately. And it's an easy read, and it's not a read where you go, oh, that's development. But that 1 second or half a second of faster processing of what the defense is doing allows the offensive players to get the ball quickly and kind of move to get some more yards on the same play where you would have taken a little bit longer last season. And that just moves the chains, and it keeps drives going. And then it sets up these play action deep passes where obviously he's hitting those. I mean, the one for H.A. Brown in week 1 against the Lions, that was a drop, that was a dime. I mean, that just hit right where it's supposed to. And then we also see some of the plays here against Washington where it's more up in the air. It's more up to the wide receiver to make the play on the ball, and he's giving his guys chances. That really kind of goes back to having playmakers like a Smitty and like an AJ who can do that. They'll go up there and they'll get those balls. So I think for it's processing, it's ball placement, and it's confidence in the guys around him that really has elevated his game, because it's not perfect. I mean, it's by no means it's flawless. And I think that's kind of the scary part after these 3 games. When you go back and you watch the game, you say, okay, this is not 100% ideal, but it's working and they're dominating while they're doing it. So, I mean, he preaches it to the guys all the time that we can still go out there. We can still play better. They haven't even scratched the surface of potential for the offense. And with everything we're hearing about how hard of a worker he is, and we see the bond between these guys, man, it can be scary down the road, I think.
I absolutely agree with you. I think the rest of the NFL would consider it scary, especially when you think about the fact we haven't even talked about the defense yet. The defensive line is coming off a 9-sack game. One of them went to TJ Edwards. Brandon Graham had 2.5 sacks. I mean, it was just a crazy game. Was it the Eagles' defensive line being that dominant, or is the Commanders' offensive line just terrible?
I think it's a good combination. Because when you famously from that game, the most crazy thing it had like 17 quarterback hits, something crazy like that. Then naturally the 9 sacks go in there as well. But they did it with 4-man pressures, so it wasn't really anything. It wasn't anything exotic. Like we saw against the Vikings, they had a ton of 5-man pressures with TJ Edwards as the free blitzer. Got in there, got a bunch of QB hits on Kirk Cousins as well. That wasn't the case against Washington. But I think it was more a combination of the Washington offensive line. I think that was a big part of that in the first drive where they had 3 sacks already. Kind of rattled Carson Wentz into seeing some of the things that we very well know from his time in Philadelphia, that when he gets hit a lot, he starts to see ghosts a little bit. He doesn't really trust people down the field. He'll start to extend plays in the pocket and get hit more often. So I think it was also a product of that, but not to discredit the defensive line. I think they played a terrific game. Jordan Davis, we really saw him eat up a bunch of double teams in there to get Fletcher Cox in some one-on-one situations, and he really took advantage of that. I think he had a couple sacks, 2 sacks maybe. Josh Sweat, Josh Sweat. He's been terrific on tape. in the 2 first weeks that just hasn't really showed up in the stat sheet yet. And the way that guy can bend off the edge and still, like, in absurd angles, get his hand on the quarterback is something that pays off in a game like that, where he's getting a couple sacks in there. So I think it was a combination of the Eagles defense taking advantage of a bad offensive line and Carson Wentz doing Carson Wentz things in the pocket after getting hit a couple times. So really nothing exotic from Jonathan Gannon. I think it's more credit to the individual performance of the defensive line more than Jonathan Gannon drawing up stuff. That was more the case of against the Vikings. That was a really good job of making timely blitzes and getting Kirk Cousins rattled.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me for the Vikings game is Troy Aikman saying, "And here's another blitz from Jonathan Gannon," and I'm like, "What?" But it maybe
what is that?
Yeah, exactly. What planet am I on? But am I back in Amsterdam? Anyway, so when it comes to the word exotic, I don't want to use it for this, but just use the word different. Maybe Hassan Reddick had his best game as an Eagle. Did you see Jonathan Gannon maybe lining him up different? Did you see him being used differently at all defensively, or was he just winning his battles like everybody else on the defensive line?
Yeah. Hassan Reddick, his sacks, it wasn't like he was totally beating his guy. I mean, it was more of one of the sacks was he has a terrific motor. We knew this. He's never going to give up on a play. So one of them, he kind of goes for the edge, doesn't really win it too much, but Carson Wentz extends the play and he gets the hit on him.
Coverage.
Carson Wentz can't find people, something like that. And then the second one is him getting to the edge and doing a fantastic job of reaching his arm in there. And as Carson Wentz is trying to throw the ball, he hits Hassan Reddick's hand. So it's not where he kind of like dominates a play and gets like pulled off a massive move and then kind of hits a guy like we saw against he did 2 times against Jalen Hurts, where he got some bang-in hits in there. So, but again, not to discredit his rushes, but it wasn't really different from the other games. It wasn't like he was being used in a new way against Washington. He made the most of the opportunities when he had those. But it wasn't. I won't say that Reddick's game was more impressive than BG, Sweat, Cox, Milton, or even Jordan Davis for that matter. But he just cashed in on a couple of good plays with high motor.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me ask you this. When it comes to your expectations before the season and your expectations now 3 games in, have your expectations changed at all? What do you think the ceiling is for this Eagles football team?
Ceiling is Super Bowl for the Eagles, because they're, stacked on both sides of the ball. The progression that Hurts has made, really, we set this in the offseason. If Jalen Hurts can take the jump, this team is loaded on both sides of the ball, on all position groups, that barring injury, and they do have a lot of depth on the team, the ceiling is a Super Bowl win. But it really a lot of factors play into this. We know this. But it's super encouraging to see what the team has done already. And even though it's Washington Lions and Vikings, we're going to hear the argument a bunch of times that it's not the 3 biggest teams or the 3 strongest opponents. I just think we see the team playing defenses that are doing kind of the same things that the Buccaneers were doing in the wild card game last year. And they're shredding those defenses. They're shredding soft zone. They're shredding man coverage. So really, offensively, I think there's no defense that can't be beat. And I think the Eagles defense have enough talent there that if they can keep up the same, if they can scheme up like they did against the Vikings, and they can make individual plays like they did against Washington, they can win any football game. And if you can win any football game, you're a Super Bowl contender.
I'm with you 100% there. Thomas, before I let you move on, I don't believe we've ever done this internationally before, but would you like to take the Farzy 5 fun questions we'd like to ask our first-time guests?
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
All right, let's go. All right, here we go. We're going to bring in the band. Hey, guys, you want to make it happen? Come on, let's party. Guys. They just don't want to party today. They're just lazy. Thank you. All right. Other than breaking down the Eagles, what is your best job?
My best job, I'm a doctor, but I think my best job may be mountain biking.
Mountain biking. Okay. All right. There you go. go-to fast food place. Do you have a go-to fast food place in Denmark?
I do. It's called We Do Burgers.
And do they? How are the burgers?
Oh, they're good. Yeah, they
Okay.
do. They do burgers. Yeah, they don't do anything else. It's a very simple menu. You don't have to choose anything.
Oh, my guys, it must be a dream first date place. That's great. So it's not just a clever name. They do, in fact, do burgers. That'd be great.
You just call them and say two. They know exactly what you're talking about.
Perfect segue. First date deal breaker. You're on a date. Your date does this, and you're like, I'm out.
Cowboys fan. So we don't really have that too much here, but I think that would be kind of a deal breaker. That's the thing. I mean, my girlfriend didn't know anything about football, so it was naturally I could kind of grow her into being an Eagles fan. And,
there you go.
And she's just as pessimistic about the Eagles every season as I am. So.
Wow, so you guys are from the neighborhood as far as I'm concerned. That's great. Favorite city to travel to?
Philadelphia.
Oh, look, see really, it's easier than like London or something like that.
Oh yeah, much easier. I mean, people who've been to London know how chaotic it is going to London. You can go to Philly, you can enjoy the culture there without getting absolutely blown away by massive high prices and other tourists.
But have you been to Paris? Have you made your way to Paris?
No, that is on the go-to list. Yeah,
I'll tell you, I was just there a couple months ago. It was like going over your rich friend's house. It was like they just had to show you everything they had, and you're like, I just want to go to We Have Burgers or We Do Burgers.
Right.
That's it.
The thing I heard about Paris though, because we were actually planning this. A couple of friends told me that it's hard to find croissants in Paris.
Really? Like, you can't find the old croissant?
In the land of croissant? Where are the croissants?
They shipped them all to Italy. They call them cornettos. They're delicious. They stuff them.
Yeah, man. There's so many of them, man. Yeah.
And then here you go. I'm interested to see how you answer this one. What makes you beep your horn in traffic?
People driving too slow in the overtake lane.
There you go. You know what? Everyone says when you talk about Europe, people are just like, they're just so relaxed over there. Not when they're driving, they're maniacs. But yes, the people that are too slow, that would get me as well. Thank you for taking the Farzy 5. Much appreciated there, Thomas Peterson. Guys, we can cut it right there. Thank you. Go back to smoking your cigarettes, lazy bastards. Anyway, Thomas, I really enjoyed this conversation, my friend. I really do appreciate it. Guys, if you're not following Thomas, make sure you're doing that on social media, especially on Twitter. He is a great Eagles fan follow. So follow Thomas R. Peterson right there. Thomas, thank you so much. Great catching up with you, man. Great having a conversation. We appreciate you talking birds.
My pleasure, Mark.
All right, Thomas Peterson joining us on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line.